if you know the date and the time of the stop and then where you were, they can go back and look to see, okay, who was working, who did the stop, because we have to document each interaction.
Anytime we stop someone, we're required to document where we were, what time we were, and what the interaction was about.
Few more questions. I don't want to keep you too long.
We're running a little bit.
Okay, no problem. For people that are asked about immigrant status or just anything above and beyond, are there any things that officers we should be alert that they should not be asking that you would know?
We don't ask about immigrant status. We've had Special Order number 40 on the books for years, and so immigrant status is not something we're concerned about as a department. We do.
Just got a few emails about
Yeah, and I definitely know that it changes where people worry about it based off which agency, but that's not something that we're concerned about for people during any part of our interactions. And so we never want somebody to be reticent to call us or ask for help because they think we'll check on immigrant status. And that's in alignment with the city's position about allowing people to continue to be here and not be concerned about the immigrant status or have the department work hand in hand with ICE. That's not something that we participate in.
And what if someone says you fit the description? Does that change the stop? If that's told to you?
Fit the description of a suspect is
right.
That's different.
At minimum, that's what we need to detain someone. It's called reasonable suspicion.
There you go.
So if someone calls and says, hey, someone's breaking in my car in front of the Sentinel newspaper on Crenshaw, and the suspect is described as a male, light complexion, with a beard and a blazer on. And,
Brandon.
And, officers are driving down the street and you just so happen to walk out of the building.
And I'm locking up.
Yeah, and they detain you.
And you fit the description. They tell you fit the description.
Then...
Now, is the order of that stop similar to the other stops that you were saying?
There's no specific order, and so I don't want people to get too hung up on this has to happen first, then this.
So they could stop me and say, hey, you fit the description, stop. And they not say anything to me just say, sit here.
Right.
Let me see your ID. Where are you going? And am I required? Is that when I can say, well, because I don't know anything that's going on, I don't want to answer any questions. And that's why I was saying to know our rights is when we could say, I need to speak to a supervisor. I need to know
Typically, then you can just ask them what's going on. Yeah. And they'll normally tell you, like we said, verify, am I detained?
I've got a lot of emails that people will say, that's what doesn't happen, Brandon. That's what
sometimes
what
people
I have to say that for the public.
That's okay.
Sometimes people have said, and we've gotten the concerns and complaints at the Inspector General's office is that officers don't tell me when I ask. Well, officers are required to tell you at some point, but the first thing that officers typically want to do is make sure that they're safe and make sure you're safe. So as long as they feel like the situation is safe, they should talk to you and explain to you what the situation is and why they're detaining you.
But to be clear again, the civilian isn't required to answer their questions any quicker.
Other than to identify yourself. So when they're asking you those questions, you'll normally see them have a card in their hand that they're filling out where they're like, what's your name? What's your date of birth? What's your address?
Where are you going? Where are you coming from? Obviously, and I'm saying this not to be difficult or create difficult persons, but for people that feel uncomfortable and don't want to answer, do want to say, hey, I need a supervisor. I don't know why you're stopping me. Maybe this is an officer who stopped before and they weren't as pleasant. So I have to speak up for the people that are saying it's not happening the way that you guys are saying.
Technically, you are not required to carry ID in the state of California. You're not required to carry ID or identify yourself. However, if I'm conducting an investigation, it's just going to prolong the investigation if you do not identify yourself and tell me who you are. And the officer can prolong the detention for a reasonable amount of time in order for you to identify
So they could
themselves.
technically arrest you to identify you at the police station if you had no ID and were refusing to give your any ID.
Well, they can continue to detain you until they can identify who you are.
Yeah, okay.
And again, it has to be a reasonable time frame. That's what the courts have said.
Yeah, okay.
But like anything, reasonable is based on the independent case, and there's no way to be specific about the block of time that
we can't keep you for a couple of days.
So we know 2 days is too long, but I can't say that 20 minutes is too long, depending on the type of investigation.
And I know we can go and we'll revisit. As we said,
coming back to this topic
know your
at some
rights.
point.
We will have a part 2, but I think this was a good initial, piercing into the topic. And we're going to also talk, more heavier topics, deadly force and different things, but we wanted to break it up today for that reason. But before we go, did you guys have any last thoughts you wanted to share with the Los Angeles Sentinel audience, about know your rights and things that, closing thoughts?
For me, I just encourage people to continue to engage with the police department. Like I said, we want to hear back from you. And the best thing to do is to have these kind of conversations. And I know it can be difficult, especially if you don't know an officer, and so you don't want to just approach people and start asking. I'm hopeful that this forum, through this partnership between the Sentinel and the LAPD, will make it so that you start receiving a lot of these questions and that we can start answering them for you and give that feedback. And then I also know...
Get over there, like, you didn't ask this. We're coming back.
But
Don't
then
worry.
also, Jody, if you want to talk about doing the Know Your Rights presentation
Yes.
through OJB.
Yeah. So Shannon and I are board members for a foundation called the Oscar Joe Bryant Foundation, and what we're going to start doing with the partnership with the chief of police and the police department is to go out to the community and start giving Know Your Rights seminars.
Great.
Presentations, and so we're hoping to kick off the first one in March, and it's strictly to educate the community and let them know what their rights are as citizens, and also to know what our authority is as police officers, because like you said, those are probably the most questions that community members have, because those are most of the interactions that we have with the community, and we want to make sure that they understand that these are your rights, and it's important to know your rights, because there's a lot of false information that's out there you see on social media and things of that nature. People say, oh, you can't do this, or you can do that. Well, like we mentioned, if it's a pedestrian stop, and just to kind of go back, and I know we're finishing up, but in a pedestrian stop, you're not required to give your ID, but if you're driving, then you are required to. So that's
so we can go over those.
But it's important.
Yeah, to go over
to
those
hear it
nuances.
said that black and white
Right.
is important
because you're driving, so you have to have your
that.
driver's license.
That makes
And
sense.
the final thing about it is our goal as a law enforcement agency is to make the community safer. And so knowing your rights, knowing what can and can't happen from the law enforcement agency, that's important. And we want to be open and engaging about that, because we want the community to understand this is a partnership. And it's not for us to come in and be an oppressive force. It's for us to work together to make sure that these communities are safe and what they should be for everybody that's living there.
And it makes our jobs easier.
For sure. We would love to have our jobs be easier.
No, not again.